I'm Charlotte, but everyone calls me Lottie. I'm 29, a pediatric nurse, and I was absolutely convinced I had found my fairy tale ending with Evan, my fiancé, who's an architect. After 5 years of living on a shoestring budget, I had managed to save up $60,000 for the wedding I had always dreamed of. But what was supposed to be the happiest celebration of our engagement quickly devolved into an absolute nightmare when my own father demanded I turn over every single penny to my brother, Leo. When I refused, the sound of his hand striking my face reverberated through the room in front of all our friends and family. He had no idea what he had just unleashed. Before I dive into the rest of this, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever had to stand up to family pressure, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Growing up in a modest Chicago neighborhood, I figured out my place in the family hierarchy pretty early on. The second my younger brother Leo was born, when I was just 4 years old, it was crystal clear that he was the golden child. My parents, Robert and Helen Pierce, never made any effort to hide their blatant favoritism. While Leo was treated to elaborate birthday parties, the newest gadgets, and a constant stream of praise, I got used to celebrating my accomplishments quietly, most of the time by myself. Lottie, your brother needs new cleats for his travel soccer team. We're going to have to cancel that art camp for you this summer, my mother would announce, her voice completely devoid of any apology. That was the recurring theme of my childhood. Leo's wants always, without fail, took precedence over my needs. When it came time to start thinking about college, I knew better than to even bring up the topic of financial assistance with my parents. We have to save for Leo's education. He has the potential to get into a top-tier university, my father explained when I broached the subject during my senior year of high school. So I spent countless hours filling out every scholarship application I could get my hands on, took out student loans, and worked a part-time job at a local diner to scrape my way through nursing school. Those years were an exhausting blur. I would be up before dawn for the opening shift, rush to a full schedule of classes, and then stay up studying until well after midnight, only to wake up and do it all over again. All the while, Leo was breezing through his business degree at an expensive private university, essentially a 4-year-long party that was entirely funded by our parents. Despite his consistently mediocre grades and a couple of close shaves with academic probation, their unwavering faith in him never faltered. After I graduated, I landed a position as a pediatric nurse at Chicago Children's Hospital. The job was emotionally draining but incredibly fulfilling. I found a profound sense of purpose in comforting sick children and being a source of stability for their terrified parents. My salary wasn't huge, but I was fiercely determined to build a life of financial independence. That's when I started my wedding fund. Even though I wasn't in a serious relationship at the time, I knew that one day I wanted to walk down the aisle without any strings attached, without being financially beholden to anyone. Every single month, a portion of my paycheck was automatically transferred into a high-yield savings account that I nicknamed Future Wedding. It started with $100, then grew to $200, and eventually more as I got raises and picked up extra shifts. I was relentless with my budget, brown bagging my lunch every single day, living with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment and buying my clothes from thrift stores. After 5 years of this strict discipline, I had managed to accumulate $60,000. And then I met Evan Carter. Unlike other men I had dated who seemed either intimidated by my independence or tried to diminish it, Evan celebrated my strength. As a successful architect at a prestigious firm, he understood the value of hard work and building something from the ground up. We had an instant connection, bonding over our shared love for old black and white films and long hikes along the lakefront trail. Within 6 months, I was absolutely certain he was the one. "You are the most incredible person I've ever met," Evan told me on our 1-year anniversary during a picnic at Millennium Park. "You've been through so much, but instead of letting it make you bitter, it's made you kind." What made our relationship feel even more like a fairy tale was Evan's family. His parents, David and Susan Carter, welcomed me with such genuine warmth from the very beginning. Susan would call me just to check in and see how my week was going. And David was always asking about my work at the hospital, showing a sincere interest in my career. After a lifetime of feeling invisible to my own parents, their affection felt like a foreign language that I was finally beginning to understand. When Evan proposed on a crisp autumn evening on a bridge illuminated by twinkling fairy lights, I said yes, without a single moment of hesitation. As we began to discuss our future, I proudly told him about my wedding fund. "You saved all of that by yourself?" he asked, his eyes wide with admiration. "Lottie, that's incredible. But you know my parents have already offered to help pay for the wedding." "I know, and I'm so grateful for that," I replied. "But this is something I need to do for myself. I've been working toward this for years." Despite the deeply strained relationship I had with my family, a small, stubborn part of me still held out hope that my engagement could be a turning point. I thought that maybe, just maybe, seeing me so genuinely happy would finally make them see me as the capable, loving woman I had become. So against my better judgment, I decided to invite them to our engagement party. "Are you sure about this?" Evan asked gently when I shared my plan. "I just don't want to see you get hurt." "They're still my family," I said, even though a knot of anxiety was already tightening in my stomach. I have to at least give them a chance to be part of this. I had no idea how spectacularly that decision was about to backfire. I spent weeks planning the perfect engagement party. We reserved a private room at the Vista Room, a chic restaurant in downtown Chicago with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the city skyline. With its soft, ambient lighting, crisp white tablecloths, and sophisticated atmosphere, it felt like the ideal setting to celebrate our new chapter. The morning of the party, I woke up with a swarm of butterflies in my stomach. Not just the excited kind, but the anxious ones too. Evan noticed my unease as I stood in front of the mirror, compulsively smoothing out the fabric of my champagne-colored silk dress. "You look stunning," he said, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind and meeting my eyes in the reflection. "Tonight is about us. No matter what happens with your family, just remember that." I nodded, so grateful for his quiet understanding. "I just want it to be perfect." "It already is," he whispered, kissing my temple. We arrived at the restaurant early to oversee the final details. The florist had arranged stunning centerpieces of white peonies and eucalyptus. A jazz trio was setting up in the corner, and the bar was fully stocked for our signature cocktail, a lavender-infused gin fizz. Evan's parents were the first to arrive. Susan was radiant in a deep blue gown, and David looked dapper in a tailored charcoal suit. They came with a beautifully wrapped gift and even warmer hugs. "We are just so thrilled to officially welcome you to the family, Lottie," Susan said, taking both of my hands in hers. "Evan has never been happier, and we know you're the reason why." David nodded in agreement. "You two are a perfect match. We couldn't have hoped for a better partner for our son." Their sincere kindness brought tears to my eyes. This is what a family was supposed to feel like: supportive, loving, and present. As more guests arrived, colleagues from the hospital, Evan's friends from his firm, and my own small circle of close friends, the room filled with joyful chatter and congratulations. My best friend Maya showed up with her husband, a magnum of champagne in hand. "This place is incredible," she whispered, giving my arm a squeeze. "You really outdid yourself." "Thanks for being here," I said, genuinely thankful for her unwavering friendship. Maya had been my rock through every bit of my family drama, always ready with a shoulder to cry on or a necessary dose of tough love. At precisely 7:30, just as we were about to give our welcome toast, my parents and Leo made their entrance. My mother was ostentatiously overdressed in a sequined gown that seemed more suited for a New Year's Eve gala. My father looked stiff and uncomfortable in his suit, and Leo wore an expression of profound boredom. "Charlotte," my mother said, kissing the air beside my cheeks. "Congratulations." "Thank you for coming," I replied, forcing my voice to stay even. It means a lot. My father handed me a generic card in a plain white envelope, which I knew held nothing more than their signatures. Leo didn't even bother to offer a congratulations. His eyes immediately scanned the room and settled on the open bar. "That's Evan over there," I said, gesturing to where my fiancé was laughing with some friends. "Would you like me to introduce you to his parents?" "Maybe in a bit," my mother said dismissively. "We just got here." I swallowed my disappointment and excused myself to mingle with other guests. Over the next hour, I kept a wary eye on my family. They mostly kept to themselves, my parents engaging in stilted, brief conversations with anyone who approached, while Leo methodically worked his way through the free-flowing champagne. At one point, I saw them huddled together, whispering intensely and casting glances in my direction. My stomach clenched with a familiar sense of dread. I knew that look. They were scheming something about me, and it was never good. Maya noticed it too. "You okay?" she asked, her gaze following mine. "Your brother seems to be enjoying the free drinks a little too much. When doesn't he?" I sighed. But tonight isn't about them. I refuse to let them ruin it. The first part of the party was wonderful. Evan gave a heartfelt speech about our relationship that left many guests misty-eyed. The jazz trio played beautifully, the food was exquisite, and everyone seemed to be having a fantastic time. For a fleeting, shining moment, I let myself believe that maybe this time would be different. But that fragile bubble of hope was violently burst when my father approached me while I was chatting with some of my coworkers. "Charlotte." "A word?" he asked, his tone clipped and formal. "In private." A warning bell clanged in my head, but I nodded and excused myself. We stepped out onto the small balcony overlooking the glittering city. The crisp night air should have been refreshing, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "This is a lovely party," he began, avoiding my gaze and staring out at the skyline. "Thank you," I said, bracing myself for whatever was coming next. He cleared his throat after a tense silence. "I was speaking with Evan's father. He mentioned you've saved up quite a substantial wedding fund." My defenses shot up instantly. "Yes, I've been saving for 5 years. $60,000 is an awful lot of money," he continued, finally turning to face me. There was something in his expression that made my stomach drop, especially for a wedding. "It's my money," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I earned it and saved it for this specific purpose." He nodded slowly, and I could practically see the gears turning in his head. "Your brother has been having a hard time lately." And there it was. The real reason for this private chat. "Leo lost his job a few months ago," my father went on, his voice dropping as if he were sharing a great shame. His company had to downsize, and he was one of the first let go. He and his wife are struggling to keep up with their mortgage payments. I remained silent, already knowing exactly where this was headed. And, he added, saving what he clearly believed was the knockout blow, his wife, Jessica, is pregnant. "You're going to be an aunt, Charlotte. They're going to need all the help they can get. Under any other circumstances, the news of a new baby in the family would have been joyous. But the calculating glint in my father's eye told me this announcement was a strategic weapon, not a happy piece of news. "I'm sorry to hear about Leo's job," I said cautiously. "But what does that have to do with me?" My father shifted his weight, then squared his shoulders. "We think you should give your wedding fund to your brother." Even though I had half expected it, hearing the words said out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. "What?" $60,000 would be a lifeline for Leo right now, he pressed on, his confidence growing. It would let them keep their house, get ready for the baby. "And what about my wedding?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. "The money I spent 5 years of my life saving." He waved a dismissive hand. "You and Evan both have good jobs. You can save up again, or just have a smaller wedding. Leo needs this money now. Let me be clear," I said, feeling a hot flush of anger rise in my cheeks. "You want me to hand over the money I scrimped and saved for years, working extra shifts and denying myself even small comforts, so that Leo can continue to live a lifestyle he can't afford? Family helps family, Charlotte? My father said, his tone turning hard. And right now, Leo needs it more than you do. A bitter, incredulous laugh escaped my lips. Family helps family? Where was that philosophy when I was working 2 jobs to put myself through nursing school? When I was living on instant noodles to make rent? That was different, he said with a frown. How? How was it different? You've always been independent. You always land on your feet. Because I had to. My voice was rising now. Because I knew no one else was going to help me. You're being selfish, my father accused, his face turning red. Your brother has a family on the way, and I don't matter. My dreams don't matter. I could feel tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. That money represents years of my life, Dad. Years of planning for a day I've dreamed of since I was a little girl. My mother must have been watching us because she suddenly appeared in the doorway to the balcony. Is everything all right? She asked, though her expression told me she knew exactly what was happening. Tell her, Helen, my father said. Tell her she needs to help her brother. My mother came closer, placing a hand on my arm in a gesture that was meant to be comforting but felt utterly manipulative. Sweetheart, we know how hard you worked for that money. But think about your brother. Think about your new little niece or nephew. Wouldn't you want them to have the best possible start in life? The emotional blackmail was so transparent it was almost laughable. By bankrolling their irresponsible parents? That's not how you give a child a good start. Charlotte, be reasonable, my mother urged. This isn't just about money, it's about being there for family. Where were you when I needed family? I asked softly. Where were you on my graduation day when no one showed up? Where were you when I got my first apartment and had to move every box myself because everyone was busy at Leo's golf tournament? You're digging up ancient history, my father scoffed. It's not ancient history to me, I shot back. It's a pattern that has defined my entire life. And now you expect me to sacrifice my wedding fund to continue enabling Leo's irresponsibility? Your brother is not irresponsible, my mother said defensively. On autopilot, he's just had some bad luck. Bad luck doesn't account for the 5 jobs he's been fired from in 3 years, I countered. Bad luck doesn't explain why he bought a house he couldn't afford on his own, or why he's still driving a luxury SUV he can't make the payments on. So you won't help him? My father demanded, his voice growing louder. Your own brother? I will not give him my wedding fund, I stated firmly. That money is for my wedding to Evan. I could see other guests starting to glance our way, aware that a tense scene was unfolding. Across the room, Evan caught my eye, his brow furrowed with concern. I gave him a subtle shake of my head, not wanting to drag him into it just yet. I can't believe how heartless you've become, my mother said. I didn't raise you to be this way. You didn't raise me at all, I replied quietly. I raised myself. That remark seemed to set my father off completely. Now you listen here, young lady. We sacrificed everything for you kids. For Leo, I corrected. You sacrificed everything for Leo. I was just an afterthought. Several guests were now openly staring. I saw Evan starting to move towards us, his face a mask of concern. Noticing the commotion, Leo peeled himself away from the bar and approached, his eyes narrowed. What's going on? Leo asked, looking from our parents to me. Your sister refuses to help you, my father announced, his voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear clearly. She'd rather blow $60,000 on flowers and a fancy dinner than help her own brother keep a roof over his head. Leo's face darkened as he turned to me. Seriously, Lottie? You're just going to let me lose my house when you're sitting on that kind of cash? That money is for my wedding, I repeated, feeling like a broken record. I worked for it. I saved it for this one thing. A wedding is just one day, Leo sneered. My house is my future. And whose fault is it that your future is in jeopardy? I shot back. It's not mine. By now, a small crowd had formed around us, including Evan and his parents. The festive atmosphere had completely vanished, replaced by a thick, uncomfortable tension. What's happening? Evan asked quietly, coming to stand by my side. My family seems to think I should give my entire wedding fund to Leo, I explained, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tempest raging inside me. All of it. Evan's eyebrows shot up. The money you saved for 5 years. Why on earth would they think that? Because Leo lost his job and might lose his house, I said. And apparently, that's more important than our wedding. Of course it is, my father interjected. A roof over their heads versus some fancy party? How is that even a debate? Evan's father, David, stepped forward. Robert, this is hardly the appropriate time or place for this conversation. Charlotte and Evan are celebrating their engagement. Stay out of this, David, my father snapped. This is a family matter. Evan is about to be her family, David replied calmly. And from what I'm witnessing, he's a damn sight more supportive of Charlotte than you've ever been. The room fell dead silent. My father's face turned a frightening shade of purple. You don't know a single thing about our family, he hissed. I know that Charlotte is a remarkable young woman who has achieved everything on her own merit, David countered. And I know she deserves to be celebrated tonight, not ambushed. No one is ambushing her, my mother protested weakly. We're just asking her to help her brother in his time of need. By demanding she give him everything she's worked for? Evan asked, incredulous. How is that a reasonable request? Because family comes first, my father roared, his voice booming through the now silent restaurant. All pretense of privacy was gone. This was now a public spectacle. Give your $60,000 wedding fund to your brother right now, or this engagement is off, he shouted, his face twisted in a mask of rage. The entire room froze. Even the waitstaff stood motionless, trays hovering in midair. I felt like I'd been plunged into ice water, my body rigid with shock. You don't get to decide if my engagement is on or off, I finally managed to say, my voice a low, steady tremor. That is between Evan and me. As long as you are a Pierce, you will honor your family obligations, my father bellowed, stabbing a finger in my direction. And your primary obligation is to help your brother. I am not giving Leo my money, I repeated, my voice like steel. Not now, not ever. Evan squeezed my hand, a silent signal of his unwavering support, then addressed my father. Sir, with all due respect, you have no right to make demands about Lottie's money or our engagement. She earned that savings, and we have plans for it, for our future. Plans? Leo interjected with a sneer. What about my plans? My life is falling apart and she's worried about floral arrangements and a pretty dress. That's not fair, Evan said. Lottie has been supporting herself her entire life. She's earned the right to use her savings however she sees fit. Stay out of this, my father warned Evan. This doesn't concern you. Anything that concerns Lottie concerns me, Evan replied, his voice dangerously calm. My mother put a hand on my father's arm, likely sensing he was about to completely lose it. Robert, maybe we should just discuss this another time. But my father shook her off, his blazing eyes locked on me. Charlotte, I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you going to help your brother? Are you going to give him the money? I took a deep breath and stood up straighter. Number. That money is for my wedding. Leo's financial problems are his to solve, not mine. What happened next felt like it was unfolding in slow motion. My father's face contorted with pure fury. He took 2 long strides, closing the space between us. Then, before anyone could react, he raised his hand and slapped me, hard across the face. The sharp crack of the impact silenced the entire room. A hot, stinging pain exploded across my cheek, and I stumbled backward, only kept from falling by Evan's strong arms catching me. Gasps and cries of disbelief rippled through our guests. Tears sprang to my eyes, but they were tears of pure rage, not pain. As I straightened up, I looked my father dead in the eye and said, in a voice that carried through the stunned silence, "You're about to get a surprise you'll never forget." Evan's arm was a protective shield around me. "Someone call security," he said, his voice shaking with tightly controlled anger. Now. Maya was already pulling out her phone, her face pale but resolved. "I'm calling the police," she announced. "What just happened was assault." "Police?" My father scoffed, though a flicker of fear finally crossed his face. "Don't be ridiculous. This is a family matter." "You struck her in a room full of 50 witnesses," David stated flatly. "That's not a family matter. That's a crime." My mother rushed forward, suddenly desperate to do damage control. "Lottie, please. Your father didn't mean it. He's just under a lot of stress about Leo's situation. We can talk about this." "There's nothing left to talk about," I said, my cheek throbbing. "He made his choice. Now I'm making mine." Leo shoved his way through the crowd, his expression a mix of embarrassment and defiance. "Way to go, Lottie. Always have to make it all about you, don't you? Now you're getting Dad arrested just because he lost his temper." "He hit me," I said simply. "In what world is that acceptable? He was frustrated. You were being completely selfish. Refusing to hand over $60,000 of my own hard-earned money isn't selfish," I replied. "It's called having boundaries." My father, seemingly starting to grasp the gravity of his actions, took a hesitant step back. "Charlotte, let's not be hasty. I apologize. I lost my temper." "It's too late for apologies," Evan said, his arm still firmly around me. "You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." The restaurant manager appeared, his face a mask of deep concern. "Is everything all right here? Security is on its way." "No, everything is not all right," Evan replied. "This man," he said, pointing at my father, "just assaulted my fiancée. We've called the police." "This is preposterous," my father protested, but I could see the panic blooming in his eyes. "I'm her father." "That doesn't give you the right to lay a hand on her," Susan said, stepping forward to stand with me. "Being a parent means protecting your child, not harming them." 2 security guards in black suits arrived, positioning themselves near my father. "Sir, we're going to need you to step away and wait for the police," one of them said firmly. "This is an outrage," my father blustered, but he didn't resist. My mother grabbed my arm. "Lottie, please don't do this. He's your father." I gently pulled my arm away. A father who just slapped me in public because I wouldn't give my brother $60,000. "I'm done being the family doormat, Mom." A few minutes later, 2 police officers walked into the restaurant. My father froze, the color draining from his face as they approached him, the reality of the situation finally crashing down. "Can someone tell me what happened here?" asked the first officer, a tall woman with a no-nonsense air. A dozen voices started at once, but she held up a hand, one at a time. "Let's start with the young lady who appears to be the victim." Evan kept his arm around me as I stepped forward. "My name is Charlotte Pierce. That man is my father, Robert Pierce. We were having an argument during my engagement party, and he slapped me across the face. And are there witnesses to this?" the officer asked, scanning the room. A sea of hands went up. "We all saw it," Maya confirmed. "It was completely unprovoked. Charlotte was just telling him she wouldn't give her wedding savings to her brother." The officer nodded and turned to my father. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." My father fumbled for his wallet, his hands trembling. "This is just a misunderstanding," he stammered. "A family disagreement that got out of hand. Striking another person is assault, sir. Whether they're family or not," the officer replied, calmly examining his license. "Robert Pierce. Do you deny hitting your daughter?" My father looked around the room as if searching for an ally, but found only stern, disapproving faces. I lost my temper," he finally admitted, but she was being unreasonable, refusing to help her own brother. "That's no justification for physical violence," the second officer stated. Then, the female officer turned back to me. "Miss Pierce, would you like to press charges?" That was the moment, the point of no return. I felt the weight of decades of neglect, of manipulation, of being made to feel less than. For years, I had made excuses for their behavior, forgiven slights without ever receiving an apology, and accepted crumbs of affection in the name of keeping the peace. Not anymore. Yes, I said, my voice clear and strong. I want to press charges. My mother let out a strangled sob. Charlotte, no. You can't do this to your father. He did this to himself, I replied steadily. Leo pushed forward. This is insane. You're really having Dad arrested over a slap? After everything they've done for you? What exactly have they done for me, Leo? I asked quietly. Name one thing. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, stumped. The officers asked my father to step outside with them. As they escorted him away, he looked back at me, his face a mask of utter disbelief, as if he couldn't process that I was actually standing up to him. You'll regret this, he said, but the threat rang hollow. Once they were gone, the remaining guests stood in an awkward, heavy silence. Evan cleared his throat. I think it's probably best if we call it a night. Thank you all so much for coming, and I am so sorry for how this evening ended. People began gathering their things, murmuring words of sympathy to me as they left. Evan's parents stayed close, their presence a silent, solid wall of support. My mother approached me one last time, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this? He's your father. How could he hit me? I countered. I'm his daughter. He was upset. People make mistakes when they're upset. This wasn't a mistake, Mom. This was the boiling point of a lifetime of favoritism and emotional abuse. And I am done accepting it. She just shook her head, lost in her own reality. What will people say? Robert Pierce arrested at his own daughter's engagement party. I don't care what people say, I said, and I meant it. I care about finally standing up for myself. Leo stood nearby, glaring at me. So that's it then. Dad gets arrested and you get to keep your precious wedding fund. You happy now? This was never about the money, Leo, I said, feeling a deep wave of exhaustion wash over me. It was about respect. Something this family has never, ever shown me. Oh, poor Lottie, he mocked. Always the victim. Evan stepped between us. I think you both need to leave. Now. Gladly, Leo sneered. Come on, Mom. Let's go deal with this mess, since Charlotte is too busy playing the martyr. They left without another word, my mother casting one last pleading look over her shoulder. The beautiful restaurant was nearly empty now, with just Evan, his parents, Maya, and a few other close friends left. I sank into a chair, the adrenaline finally draining away, leaving me shaky and spent. Are you okay? Evan asked, kneeling beside me. I don't know, I answered honestly. I just had my father arrested. He assaulted you, David reminded me gently. You did the right thing. It doesn't feel right, I admitted. It feels awful. That's because you're a good person, Susan said, sitting next to me and taking my hand. A good person who tried to believe the best of her family, even when they consistently showed you their worst. Maya brought me a glass of water. I am so damn proud of you, Lottie. That took more courage than I can even imagine. What happens now? I asked, looking at Evan. Now we go home, he said simply, and tomorrow we figure out what's next. Together. As we walked out of the restaurant, I glanced back at the elegant room that was supposed to be the backdrop for one of the happiest nights of my life. Instead, it had become the stage for a family implosion that was years in the making. But beneath the shock and sadness, I felt something else stirring, a strange, unfamiliar sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I had refused to be made small. I had refused to sacrifice my own happiness on the altar of a dysfunctional family's demands. Whatever came next, I knew I would face it standing on my own 2 feet. The days that followed the disastrous engagement party were a hazy, emotional blur. I felt like I was moving through a fog, going through the motions of work and daily life, while my mind endlessly replayed the incident, trying to process its implications for my future. The morning after, I woke up to my phone buzzing with 32 missed calls and over 50 text messages. Most were from my mother, a frantic mix of guilt trips. How could you do this to your own father? And desperate pleas. Please drop the charges, Lottie. We're still your family. A few were from Leo, alternating between furious accusations and clumsy attempts at reconciliation when the anger didn't work. You need to block them for a while, Maya advised when I showed her the flood of messages. You need space to even think straight. I took her advice, silencing their numbers and focusing on just getting through 1 hour at a time. Evan was my anchor. He was just there, providing quiet, steady support without pushing me to talk before I was ready. About 3 days after the incident, we got a call from the district attorney's office. My father had been charged with misdemeanor assault. The prosecutor explained that, since he had a clean record, he would likely be offered a plea deal involving probation, community service, and mandatory anger management counseling. Is that it? Evan asked after I hung up, his voice tight with anger. After what he did? It's not about revenge, I said, surprised by my own clarity. It's about consequences. For the first time in his life, he's actually facing consequences for his behavior. A week later, my mother's sister, my Aunt Clara, called. We had never been especially close, but she had always shown me more kindness than my own parents. Lottie. I heard what happened. She began cautiously. I just wanted to see how you were holding up. I'm okay, I said automatically, just trying to process it all. There's something you should know, she continued, her voice low. About Leo's financial problems. I tensed. What about them? It's not just that he lost his job. Your parents have been bailing him out for years. He has a gambling problem, Lottie, a serious one. The word hung in the air, striking me with the force of another slap. Gambling? Are you sure? Positive. He's racked up tens of thousands in debt. Your parents have drained almost all of their retirement savings to cover for him. That's why they were so desperate for you to give him your wedding fund. They have nothing left. Suddenly, it all clicked into place. The desperation in my father's eyes, my mother's frantic pleas, Leo's sense of entitlement. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. They were drowning. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you deserve to know the whole truth, she replied. And because I want you to be careful. People do desperate things when they're backed into a corner. After that call, I knew I needed professional help to untangle the mess in my head. I found a therapist, Dr. Winters, who specialized in family trauma. She helped me see that what I'd endured my whole life wasn't normal. What you're describing is a classic golden child and scapegoat dynamic, she explained in our second session. Your parents built a system where Leo could do no wrong, and you were responsible for absorbing all the family's dysfunction. Your father's actions at the party were just the most extreme manifestation of a pattern that's been in place your entire life. Working with Dr. Winters was transformative. It gave me the language to understand the manipulation I'd experienced and the tools to start building healthy boundaries. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel righteous anger, not just sadness. Meanwhile, Evan and his parents continued to be a fortress of love and support. Susan called me every day, and David offered practical legal advice. Their unconditional affection was a daily lesson in what real family looks like. 3 weeks after the incident, an unexpected visitor showed up at our apartment. It was my father's sister, Aunt Isabel, whom I hadn't seen in years. I came as soon as I heard, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. I can't believe Robert did that to you. We sat in my living room and she unspooled a family history I never knew. Your father's own father was the same way, she explained, her voice heavy with sadness. Controlling, a quick temper, always playing favorites. Richard was his scapegoat, and I was the golden child. I always hoped he would be the one to break the cycle, not repeat it. Why did no one ever tell me this? I asked. Our family doesn't do uncomfortable truths, she said. We sweep things under the rug until the rug catches fire. I should have said something years ago when I saw how they were treating you. I'm so sorry, Lottie. The court date for my father's assault charge was set for a month after the incident. I chose my outfit carefully that morning, a simple navy dress, wanting to project a sense of calm I didn't entirely feel. The courtroom was small and drab. Evan sat beside me, his hand a warm, steady presence on my knee. My parents and Leo sat on the opposite side, refusing to look at me. When the case was called, my father stood beside his lawyer, looking smaller and more diminished than I had ever seen him. The judge asked if he wanted to make a statement. "I deeply regret my actions," my father said, his voice stripped of its usual authority. "I lost control in a moment of extreme stress and did something unforgivable to my daughter. I take full responsibility." He was sentenced to 6 months of probation, 50 hours of community service, and mandatory weekly anger management classes. As we were leaving the courthouse, I overheard my father talking to a man I didn't recognize. "I'll get you the rest of the money by next month, Frank," my father was saying. "Once we sell the lake house." "This is the 3rd extension, Robert," the man replied. "I can't keep covering for Leo's debts. My partners are getting antsy." I know. We've already borrowed from Helen's sister and my own brother. We told them it was to help with Charlotte's wedding. Everyone was happy to contribute to that." My blood ran cold. They had been soliciting money from relatives for Leo's gambling debts, lying and saying it was for my wedding. Evan's face hardened. Is there no end to their deceit? At that moment, I knew. The favoritism, the neglect. I had learned to live with those. But this level of calculated deception was the final, ultimate betrayal. "I think I need to cut them off completely," I said, the decision solidifying in my mind, for now at least. Evan nodded. "Whatever you need to do, I'm with you." That night, I wrote 3 letters, one to my father, one to my mother, and one to Leo. I explained that I needed to take an indefinite break from our relationship to focus on my own healing. "I don't hate you," I wrote to my parents, "but I cannot be part of a family system that is fundamentally toxic to me. If there is ever a chance to rebuild, it must be on a foundation of honesty, respect, and equality." After mailing the letters, I felt a profound sense of relief, as if a heavy cloak had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, I was putting my own well-being first. "Are you okay?" Evan asked as we lay in bed that night. "Not yet," I admitted, "but I think I'm going to be." 6 months passed. Spring blossomed into a warm, bright summer, and I felt a sense of renewal mirroring the season. The first month of no contact was the hardest. I'd have moments of doubt, wondering if I was being too harsh. But then I'd remember the sting of that slap, the years of feeling invisible, and my resolve would harden. As Dr. Winters said, healing isn't a straight line. Slowly, the good days started to outnumber the bad. I threw myself back into planning our wedding, determined to reclaim the joy that had been tarnished. "I want to donate $10,000 of the fund to a local domestic violence shelter," I told Evan one evening. He squeezed my hand. "I think that's a beautiful idea." Susan and David stepped in to fill the roles my parents had abdicated. Susan came with me to my final dress fitting, her eyes welling with tears. "You look absolutely breathtaking, Lottie," she said, hugging me. "You're the daughter I always wished for. My chosen family grew stronger. Maya was a constant source of support. My work colleagues rallied around me. My life was being rebuilt, not on obligation, but on genuine connection." 3 months after the court date, a letter arrived from my father. I was hesitant to open it. It was 4 pages long, written in a tone I had never heard from him before. He took full responsibility, not just for the slap, but for the years of favoritism. "My therapy has forced me to look at the patterns of my own upbringing," he wrote. "I see now that I repeated the very cycle of abuse that was inflicted on me. This is an explanation, not an excuse." He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said he was sorry and that he respected my need for space. I shared the letter with Dr. Winters. "It sounds like genuine reflection," she said, "but true change is proven over time, not with a single letter. You don't have to do anything right now." I sent a brief reply. I received your letter. I appreciate the apology and I am glad you are getting help. I still need time. My mother and Leo remained silent. Aunt Clara told me they were caught in the same toxic spiral, my mother enabling Leo's destructive behavior. As our wedding day grew closer, I thought less about what I had lost and more about everything I had gained: a partner who cherished me, in-laws who adored me, friends who were my true family, and a sense of self-worth that no one could take away. Our wedding day was perfect. We got married in a historic botanical garden under a canopy of old oak trees. As I got ready with Maya and my friends, a profound sense of peace washed over me. David walked me down the aisle, beaming with pride. Evan's eyes were filled with tears when he saw me. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, promising to be partners in every sense of the word. During the reception, Aunt Isabel gave me a small package. It was a vintage pearl hair comb with a note from my father. "This was your grandmother's. She would have wanted you to have it. No reply needed. I wish you all the happiness you deserve." I felt a complex wave of emotions as I ran my thumb over the cool pearls. Then I handed it to Maya. "Can you put this in my hair?" "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. "It's a part of my story. Not all of it has to be bad." Later, during our first dance, Evan held me close. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Carter?" "Complete," I whispered, resting my head on his shoulder. Like every painful step led me right here. And it was true. The road had been agonizing, but it had brought me to this man, to this life, to this version of myself I had fought so hard to become. The next morning, as we headed to the airport for our honeymoon in Italy, I thought about forgiveness. Not the kind that erases the past, but the kind that frees you from its grip. I hadn't fully forgiven my family yet, but I had forgiven myself for all the years I spent trying to earn love that should have been given freely, for settling for less than I deserved, and for doubting my own value. That, I realized, was the most important gift of all. The permission to build a life based on love and respect, free from the weight of the past. As our plane took off, I looked forward to the journey ahead, knowing that the hardest choices can lead to the most profound freedom. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the ultimate act of self-love. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with the people you love? How did you navigate it? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength. Thank you for listening, and remember that you always deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. End of story.